So now I wonder if my father's failing was less a matter of bad attitude and more a case of him simply walking away from difficult situations. Maybe that's what got to me. Researchers are also finding out that when faced with uncontrollable stressors, optimists tend to react by building what they call existential resources. For example, by looking for something good to come out of a situation or using the events to grow as a person in a positive way. Jane Brody wrote, "I was 16 when my mother died of cancer. Rather than dwell on the terrible void her death left in my life, I managed to gain value from the experience. I learned to apply her lifelong frugality more constructively, living each day as if it could be my last, but with a focus on the future in case it wasn't." So in trying to piece this all together, the research as well as Brody's comments on not dwelling on the loss, but learning invaluable lessons in the wake of her mother's death, if I piece this all together, it leads me to believe that a person's outlook is less important than his or her behavior. What matters is engaging with the world, taking concrete steps towards goals. But I guess that can only happen if we're not grumbling, and if we see untapped potential out there, something that can provide benefits or make the earth perhaps a bit more comfortable. Seeing the glass as half full or half empty may give you some insight into a person's mindset. It may conveniently separate the world between optimists and pessimists, but these are terms that deserve new attention. When Nelson Mandela was finally released from jail after decades of incarceration, he was asked if he was at all optimistic that this day of his release would come. He said, "I never was optimistic, but I never lost hope." So perhaps a better understanding of optimism is not based on how you spin the contents of the glass to be half full instead of half empty. Instead, optimists are realists too, because they look for evidence that things will improve. While in prison, Mandela saw no evidence of things ever improving. Hope, however, exists in spite of evidence. Hope exists in spite of evidence. And so it would be wrong to confuse hope with optimism. William James famously said that faith is the courage to act when doubt is warranted. I hang on to his words, the courage to act. That means you don't walk away from grim scenarios. You don't grumble about them. You engage with them instead. You care enough to try to transform a tough situation, even when a good outcome is in grave doubt. Courage to stay the course relies on hope. Cornel West, reflecting on his being raised in the ghetto, said, "There was absolutely nothing to be optimistic about, but hope? Once you lost hope, you were done." Hope orients the heart. Let's face it, there's a tremendous gap between the realities of the world and what lies in our hearts, how we would like the world to be, and the potential that always lies there waiting to be tapped. And so we have choices. We can attempt to make inroads and move forward in a positive way, or detach ourselves, walk away, and grumble. The motivation to engage stems from the questions asked in our reading this morning. For what does your soul seek? For what does your soul weep? In other words, what matters to you? The drive for meaning can only be sustained by actively engaging in the world. Let me share with you the most profound 9 words ever strung together. That's saying a lot, I know. I'm risking it. Anais Nin. Here they are, 9 words. Life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. Life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. And when you think about it, this applies to everything. And from having the courage to ask someone out on a date, having the courage to apply for a job or a college, or taking part in civil disobedience. It covers the whole gamut. And of course, the root word for courage comes from the French meaning heart, le cœur. What's in your heart? Is there hope? Courage? What do you seek? For what do you weep? Meaning is not attained by expressing dissatisfaction with an uncomfortable earth. Now, we certainly have choices in how we perceive things. The proverbial glass, half full, half empty. But the real litmus test is not just the lens through which we see life, but the extent of our engagement. How much heart do we have? Or how courageous are we? I mean, don't forget, life shrinks or expands in proportion to our courage. Now, in dealing with perspectives, I was fascinated, actually just a couple of days ago, by this obituary for Lewis Simpson. I don't know if anybody saw that. Lewis Simpson was a Pulitzer Prize-winning poet who died at age 89. And the write-up included his intention to move from pessimism to optimism as expressed in his poetry. For example, in his 1964 poem called In the Suburbs, it's pretty grim. I call it a poetic grumble. In the Suburbs, he writes, "There's no way out. You were born to waste your life. You were born to this middle-class life as others before you were born to walk in procession to the temple singing." Well, I'd call this pessimism, reflecting no hope, no potential, no meaning, no courage. No way out. In later years, he consciously moves to accept the world with a little more optimism, but he doesn't quite make it. I mean, you can see he's trying to shift his position. It's, getting older, it's time to be more optimistic, but he doesn't quite make it. This is what he writes. All you really know is given at moments when you're seeing and listening. Being in love is a great help. Oh, yes, but keep a dog. He doesn't quite get there. He's trying really hard. He doesn't quite make it. Optimism or pessimism, grumble at the world or engage with the world. Courage in the face of doubt or lack of hope and surrender. In religious language, these concepts might go under the headings of good and evil, death or resurrection, salvation or damnation. The polarities stand before us. I think they are summed up best by Rebecca Parker, president of Starr King School, our UU seminary in Berkeley. She bridges both the secular and the religious by presenting the choice as either we bless the world or we curse the world. Those are the choices we have. We can either bless it or curse it. She maintains We all have gifts. She lists them: powerful minds, strong hands, the reaches of the heart, and gifts for speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of these gifts can be used to bless or curse the world. We can feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice and love. By the same token, we can also hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, withhold our love. What we do with our gifts is our choice. We can bless the world, we can curse it. Let me change that. I strongly believe that we are in this church at this time because we want to find ways of using our gifts to bless the world. That's why we're here, to bless the world. May we have the courage to do that and thereby expand our lives at the same time.